Hello, ACPS staff, and welcome to the new revised online Google Earth. Google Earth is a digital globe for teachers and students to use to visit anywhere on Earth. It's great for teaching students about history, geography, but also architecture and culture. Any place on Earth that you've ever wanted to be able to take students to, you can take them to digitally here on Google Earth. And because it's fully online, it works on our laptops, Chromebooks, and it even works on mobile devices as well. So let's get started exploring some of what you can do in Google Earth. In this first video, we're going to focus on the tools that you'll find around your dashboard here in Google Earth and some basic navigation tips for getting started. So let's start in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see we have several standard menu options, just like a lot of programs that you might use, like File, View, Add, Tools, and finally Help. All of those will be covered in specifics in future videos. Right underneath of that menu, you have an option to search Google Earth. This is pretty much where everything begins on Google Earth, is by doing a search. You can search for any named place on Google Earth. For example, I can search for a landmark like the Taj Mahal, and it will fly me to that location. But I can also be less specific and search for the name of a country, and it'll take me to a central location in that city, country, or continent that I had typed in. So you can see we don't zoom in quite as close when we're looking for something like the entire country of the United States. You can also search for specific street addresses. One additional cool search option that I want to discuss before we move on to talking about the tools and navigation is what appears at the bottom of the search window when you go to type in a new search. You'll notice you get this little blue menu option down here with what looks like a little die, and that's what it's supposed to look like, the singular of dice. And that tool is called I'm Feeling Lucky. You get to roll the dice and go anywhere that Google chooses to take you. So if you click on I'm Feeling Lucky, you have no idea where your destination's going to be. Google Earth just randomly picks a place and takes you there. This is a great way to get students out of their comfort zone, get them exploring places that are different than the places that they know and can name right off the top of their head. They can build passports of all the different places that they've visited in Google Earth using the I'm Feeling Lucky tool, maybe once a month or once a quarter in their class. They get a chance to really explore places that they've never even heard of. Any search that you do on Google Earth is going to result in you flying to that location. Once you land on your location, you'll notice this slow spinning effect. This is often disorienting to some individuals. If you click anywhere on the screen, it will stop doing that spinning effect. So if you don't care for it, as soon as you land where you're going, you'll be able to click to stop that spinning animation. On the right-hand side, you'll always see some type of information card come up about your location. Depending on how much is known about the location, you might see more or less information. For the U.S. Capitol, we're seeing a lovely street view image looking up from a water feature on one side, and then we have a small arrow here that allows us to flip through additional pictures of the U.S. Capitol. If you don't want the information card, you can always click to close it as well and regain some of the space for your map and the locations around whatever area you had searched for. Let's turn our attention back up to the upper left-hand corner. You'll also see some additional tools to add a place mark, add a path or polygon, and even access measurement tools. And again, those will be shown in detail in a future video. If we turn our attention to the bottom corner of the left-hand corner of our screen here, you'll see a button that says Layers, and Layers determines how much detail you see about the place that you've searched for. For example, right now we're set on the default of those layers, which is called Exploration, and it says it's showing me borders, labels, places, and roads. So if we were to zoom out, it would show me the border lines drawn between DC and Maryland and Virginia, and probably even the neighboring counties like Prince George's and Alexandria. If I switch to Clean, it takes off all of the labels. Like, we no longer have all those place mark labels that name the different buildings around the U.S. Capitol. If we change instead to the more detailed view, the one that says Everything, in addition to getting back things like the Peace Monument and this label here for the U.S. Capitol, we'll also see that now we have businesses that show up around. So we've got things like Hamilton's Bar and Grill and Charlie Palmer's Steak. And as we move around on the map, we'll find even more and more labels for different places that we could choose to visit if we were going to the U.S. Capitol. As I said initially, the exploration option there is the default, so you can have students change their layers depending on how much information you want them to see or how little. If you really want them to focus on the places and not the names and the labels, you can have them go to that Clean Layers option. I'm going to close out of this menu here. And let's take a moment to talk a little bit about some basic navigation when you're working on Google Earth. One of the things that I highly recommend, it is great to have an external mouse. I personally find Google Earth to be a little bit frustrating to navigate if I'm just using that touchpad that is available on a laptop and a Chromebook. So I love to have an external mouse. One of the things that you can do with an external mouse, if you left click and hold down, you can drag around on the map to look at different places around whatever you had searched for. So I'm looking for things that are around the U.S. Capitol simply by clicking, holding down, and dragging left, right, up, down. I'm pushing the map in all the different directions that I want to change my view and focus on different places that are nearby. I can also double click with my left and hold down, and now I can change my tilt so that I can see across the map as opposed to straight down, and just change that tilt angle for what I'm viewing on Earth. This allows you to also rotate your view so that you're not always looking from the north perspective or south and so on. Another thing you can do with your mouse, if you turn your attention to the center scroll wheel, if you pull your wheel back towards yourself, you're zooming out of your current view on Google Earth. And if you roll your mouse up or away from yourself, you are zooming in. One tip that I have for zooming in, it is very, very, very important where you place your mouse. If I'm kind of lazy and I just sort of drop my cursor somewhere on the screen and then I start zooming in, I am zooming in on that exact place where I put my cursor. So if my intention was to zoom in on the U.S. Capitol, then I needed to make sure that I put my cursor on the U.S. Capitol before I zoomed in. And it doesn't even matter if it's way up here in the upper right-hand corner of my screen. Once I place my cursor on it and I start scrolling away from myself, I am zooming in on whatever I had placed my cursor on. So it doesn't have to be in the center of the screen. It just has to be what your cursor is currently focused on for you to zoom in. And then as you saw, you can click and drag it so that it is in fact in the center of your screen once you get zoomed in nice and close. Now let's turn our attention to some tools that we have in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. I call this our Globe Toolset, and you'll see that we have a variety of tools that all have a different purpose when we're working in Google Earth. So we're going to start with this first tool here on the left-hand side. Looks like a little person here. His name is Pegman. Pegman allows you to enter Street View. So let's pause for a moment and talk a little bit about some of the imagery available in Google Earth. We have satellite imagery, which is taken from way out in outer space with some of the various satellites that are constantly circling out and around planet Earth. We also have aerial imagery. And aerial imagery is captured with an airplane that flies over all of these different locations and then captures aerial imagery where you're looking down on various buildings in cities, rural areas, etc. And then you also have street view imagery. And street view imagery is taken down on the ground so you can look up at the buildings or you can actually look at the specifics of a location where you are. And that's what Pegman does. Pegman allows you to go from aerial down into street view imagery so you can actually stand on the street or in the field of whatever location you are visiting. When you select Pegman, what's going to happen is parts of your screen are going to turn blue. Because we're in an urban area in downtown DC, you'll see that a lot of my screen turned blue. If we were in a very, very rural area, you may see very little blue come up. And if you're in an extremely rural area, you may not have any street view imagery available to you at all. But all of these blue markings on my screen indicate places where I could place Pegman and enter into street view imagery. So I'm going to click right here next to or maybe in front of Dunbar High School, which is now somewhat centered on my screen. And I'm going to fly down into street view imagery. Now I can use that same left click and hold to turn and look around and see the buildings. There we go. There's the high school. I can look up at the sky. I can look down at the street. And then you'll also notice sometimes you'll have these white arrows that actually allow you to navigate inside of Street View. So I'm essentially driving down the street inside of Street View so that I can get to a different angle of the school and look here at this wing of the school on one side. So utilizing these arrows allows you to change your position and focus on other things inside of Street View. When you are finished working in a Street View image, you can click the arrow in the upper left-hand corner to exit out of Street View and go back to that aerial view. I want to show you one more thing you'll notice with Pegman, so I'm going to click on him one more time and bring those blue lines back. And what I'm looking for, we're going to change our view over here. Sometimes what you'll find when you're looking at Street View is you'll see these blue dots, these circles that come up instead of the blue lines. These blue dots indicate what is known as a photosphere. When you enter into a photosphere, sometimes you'll find that you're inside of a business or a location, so you can actually use Street View to look at what is inside, not just standing out on the street, but oftentimes in the photosphere, you won't find these white arrows. It is a single 360-degree photo that you can enter into, but you don't have any option to navigate around. You can simply turn and look around. Now, this photosphere is more of a combination of the sphere where I do have the option to navigate a little bit, so I can move towards this other room and change my view and see what they have available in here for visitors as opposed to the space where we first landed. Once again, when you are done working in a photosphere, you can click that arrow in the upper left-hand corner to exit out of that and come back to your aerial view. Let's turn our attention to our second icon in our Globe Toolset. This is an option to compare the location where I'm currently viewing with my location. If I have location services turned on my device, and this is very important, you do have to have location services turned on. When I click on Show My Location, it will fly me to where I am on Earth. So as I sit here recording this video, I am at the Carver Staff Development Center, which is in Gambrills, Maryland. So it has flown me over to, you'll see there's a blue dot where they think I am, and then a much larger blue sphere where I could be if it's not entirely accurate. And it's actually not too far off from where I am. Carver is right down here. So I am inside of that blue sphere. There we go. So I'm at Carver, but the specific location where they think I am is a little bit off from where I am, maybe about a mile away. When you are done with the My Location tool, if you click on that target again, and then one more time, it will remove that and go back to just that aerial view of the map. Let's fly back over here to Washington, D.C. for our next tool that we're going to talk about here, and that is changing between 2D and 3D. Right now, we are looking straight down on Earth. We are in what is known as a two-dimensional view of Earth. Everything looks pretty flat. If I click where it says 3D right now, I am switching my view from 2D into 3D, and what it's going to do is move to almost this sideways view where now it looks like some buildings are popping up out of the ground a little bit, and we have a little bit more of a 3D view of some of these locations. So if we go back towards the US Capitol, you'll see that when we switch to 3D, we get a little bit more of a sense of this building popping up out of the ground. If we switch back to 2D, we go back to just looking straight down on our flat Earth here. Our next tool over is our compass. This allows us to orient back to north. So if we were looking down at this and we were like, well, if I move to the west of the Capitol, I should find, I don't know, let's pick a location that I think is west of the Capitol. And I come over here and I find the Senate Fountain. I'm like, that shouldn't be west of the Capitol. It's because I'm not currently oriented to north. So if you're trying to find locations nearby a place that you've searched for, you can always use this compass icon to reorient yourself to north. When you select it, it pops out a box here that tells you that there's some keyboard shortcuts. You can change your tilt or your heading. I typically use this tool to simply select this option at the bottom that says Reset to North. It swivels me around, and now I know that what is at the top of my screen is north, what's on the left is west, is east, and bottom of my screen is south. So reorienting to north can help you find locations when you know what should be around the place that you've searched for. And lastly, in our Globe Toolset, we have this plus and minus here. These allow you to zoom in and out, but as already discussed, you can do that with the center scroll wheel of your mouse. And again, I highly recommend having an external mouse. There is one more thing that you will typically see when you enter into Google Earth, and that is the Projects tool. Mine is currently collapsed over here. If I move all the way over to the center left-hand side of my screen, you'll see this tiny little white arrow here, and that is a tab that allows me to bring my Projects tool out. This tool will actually be out by default, so the first time you come to Google Earth, you may find that it is taking up the left-hand side of your screen. You can always click on the handle and drag it off of the screen again so that you can dedicate most of your screen to what you're exploring on Google Earth. But this is the Projects tool, allows me to create a new project and allows me to see existing projects that I have created previously if I've used this tool. We will cover the Projects tool in much more detail in a later video. So I hope this first video has gotten you acclimated to some of the tools here on Google Earth and basic navigation tips to help you get started. See you in a future video.